Salvete discipuli et discipulae, quid agis, utuales, ego valeo, gratias tibi. Many thanks again for your time and for your attendance here on this online course. Latin for absolute total beginners. It doesn't matter what you know, how little you know, even if you don't know what an English verb is, this session, this course is for you. By the way, it is the hottest day of the year here where I am in Derbyshire. It is going to rise to about 37 degrees this afternoon. So forgive me if my hair is a little bit, I don't have much of it left, but forgive me if it's a little bit puffy, and because it's very humid where I am right now, especially in this upper room where I am in my study. Anyway, let's go into, that's not important, let us go into Latin for beginners. Let's go into this second session, revising, recapping some of what we looked at last time. Remember some of our vocabulary for last time? We looked at our numbers from 1 to 10. Unos, dos, tres, cuatro, quinque, sex, septem, octo, novem, decem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We also saw Roma, Rome, Italia, Italy, Europa, Europe, Grecia, Greece, Hispania, Spain, Africa, Africa, Gallia, Gaul, Germania, Germany, Britannia, Britain. We saw quoque, which means also, et, which means and, in, which means in, non, which means not, and sed, which means but. Now we can begin our first full lesson in Latin. Are you ready? Our primary focus today is going to be introducing Latin nouns. Latin can act as a key for all of the languages, English included. So knowing how nouns and verbs work in Latin, knowing how grammar works in Latin, can help us with nouns and verbs in other languages, how grammar works in other languages, English included. So it's important then that we understand the so-called 8 parts of speech. These are the fundamental components of any sentence. They are, for example, interjections, pronouns, adverbs, verbs, adjectives, nouns, prepositions, and conjunctions. And we're going to go through each in turn, because I want to give us an example here as I scroll down my page. I want to give us an example here. Let's look at this sentence. Wow, he really loves that pretty girl over there between the tree and the hedge. Now, I'll concede that in order to get all 8 parts of speech in one sentence, it's not the neatest sentence. It's not necessarily something you'd find yourself saying all the time, unless you really do like to comment on the beauty of girls in rural settings, perhaps. I don't know. But wow, he really loves that pretty girl over there between the tree and the hedge. Okay, let's take it apart. The wow at the beginning of the sentence, there's an interjection, or behold, or alas, these sorts of interjections, these sorts of words, they punctuate the beginning of a sentence with an exclamation. He, there's your pronoun, in this case it's a personal pronoun, he, which stands in place for a noun, he, so the man or the boy, right? Or whatever, the man or the boy, there's a pronoun. It's in place of that proper noun. Really, that's an adverb. It modifies the verb, the doing word in the sentence, which is in this case is loves. Loves, there's our verb, it's the doing word, it's the engine of the sentence. It tells us what is happening, but really modifies loves. It's telling us that the boy really loves. It's exceptional, it's superlative. He really loves the girl. More than that, he really loves that. There's another pronoun. In this case, it's not personal. In this case, it's demonstrative. It's pointing, that, and it's pointing to the pretty girl. Now, girl is a noun here, but the pretty is an adjective. It's describing the noun. That's what adjectives do. It describes the noun. Over is a preposition, and there is another noun, and then between is another preposition. Between the tree and, now we have a conjunction. It ties together 2 things. Well, what's it tying together? It's tying together the tree, and it's also tying together the hedge. We have another noun. What we've got again is that we've got interjections, we've got pronouns, we've got adverbs, we've got verbs, we've got adjectives, nouns, prepositions, and conjunctions. And you have exactly the same thing in Latin. You have exactly the same parts of speech in Latin. Now, listen to me. If some of that went over your head, that's fine. You don't have to worry about all of this, not least because in our short time together, you're already familiar with some Latin conjunctions, e.g. sed, means but, and et, which means and. And more than that, in this course, we're going to be focusing on Latin nouns, verbs, and pronouns. We're not necessarily going to be dealing with many interjections. We're going to start today nice and easy, just looking at Latin nouns. You know some Latin nouns already, actually. For example, last time I got you to learn Roma, which means Rome, or Britannia, which means Britain. Before we continue, we have to make a quick comparison between Latin and English nouns. Latin nouns are like English nouns in some key ways. For example, Latin nouns can be singular or plural. What do we mean by that? What's singular or plural? Singular, referring to just one thing or person. Plural, referring to more than one thing. So, for example, in English, we have boy, that's singular, just one boy. We also have boys, that's plural, more than one boy. However, between English nouns and Latin nouns, there are two big differences. First, Latin nouns use grammatical gender. That is to say, masculine, feminine, and neuter. You might have come across this if you've done French or Spanish or German. We don't have it in English, but it is there in Latin, and indeed there are three genders: masculine, feminine, and neuter. Let me give you some examples. Corvus means raven, and corvus, the noun corvus, meaning raven, is masculine. Columba, meaning dove. Columba is a feminine noun in Latin. And finally, saxum, that is neuter. It means rock. It's a neuter noun. Now, this is sometimes hard for English speakers to understand because we don't have it. Yes, sometimes grammatical gender corresponds with biological gender. For example, Puella, girl, is feminine. But that's not always the case. For example, the Romans didn't think that all ravens were male, or indeed that all doves are female. They knew that there were male and female ravens and male and female doves. But corvus is a masculine noun and columba is a feminine noun. Really, what grammatical gender does is serve to encode the meaning in the noun, in the word. Now, this brings us to our second point here, which is that Latin is what's called an inflected language. What do we mean by that? Again, it's like French, it's like Spanish, it's like German, it's like Greek. Latin nouns and verbs have different endings that change depending on what it is you're trying to say. Old English used to be a much more inflected language than what we have now, modern English. That's why in modern English, we have some inflection. There is some evidence of how it used to be. Consider that noun boy. We say boy, but we also say boys. When we want to refer to one boy, we say boy. When we want to refer to there being more than one boy, we add the letter S, boys, and that changes the meaning. You're not just talking about one, you're talking about several, at least two. We also say big, and we also say bigger. And again, when we want to describe something as big, we say big. But when we want to say that something, we want to compare something with something else and say that the one is bigger than the other, we add three letters, G, E, and R, onto big, bigger, and it changes the meaning. It shows us that we're making a comparison. So again, we change the ending of the word, and depending on which ending we use for boy, boys, big, bigger, it is encoded with the correct intended meaning. And that's exactly how inflection works in Latin, except Latin is a much more inflected language than English. English has some inflection, Latin has a lot. Indeed, the entire language is structured around it. I want to give an example of that. Consider the sentence in English, the girl loves the family. The girl loves the family. In English, we can't do much with that sentence without changing the meaning entirely. So we might say, the girl the family loves, and just about be able to intuit what we're trying to say. But if I said, the family loves the girl, well, now the whole sentence is completely changed. The meaning is shifted. We're now not saying that the girl loves the family. We're saying that the family loves the girl. That's a totally different sentence. But that's not the case with Latin. So I'm going to give you the same sentence in Latin. The girl loves the family. Puella amat familiam. But in Latin, unlike in English, I can change those words around any which way I want, and the meaning remains exactly the same. So, for example, if I said Puella familiam amat, it means the same. If I said familiam Puella amat, it means the same. And if I said amat Puella familiam, it means the same. The girl loves the family. Now, why is this? It's because Latin is a highly inflected language. And so the meaning is encoded, if you will, in each of those word endings. Puella, the letter A at the end of the word Puella, meaning girl, with the A ending, with that letter at the end, it can only mean that the girl in the sentence is the subject. She's the one doing the action. In this case, she's the one doing the loving. Amat. Now, here we have a verb, and we haven't covered verbs yet, and we're not going to be covering Latin verbs for a little while, but all you need to know for now is that at the end of amat, with the at ending, it can only mean that one subject is doing the loving. We're not talking about several people doing the loving. We're only talking about one person or thing doing the loving. Familiam, with the letters A and M at the end, with the am ending, it can only mean that the family is the object receiving the love. So, Puella amat familiam, Puella familiam amat, familiam Puella amat, amat Puella familiam, it all can only mean one thing. That there is one girl, she is the subject, she's doing the loving. That there is only one person doing the loving, and that the family is the thing being loved. And so it can only mean the girl loves the family. This is how sentences work in Latin. Almost every noun or verb has a range of endings depending on what it is we're trying to say. And the noun endings are called cases. And each case describes a certain kind of relationship between the nouns and the verbs and other nouns. Now, the good thing is, before you start like a deer in headlights, oh my goodness, this is so complicated. Yes, there is a degree of complexity, but here's the good news. Latin is very systematic. There are some irregular verbs, there are some unusual nouns, there are one or two exceptions, but in the round, on the whole, Latin is a very systematic language. It's very orderly, it's very structured. All the nouns with the same case endings are grouped together into what's called a declension. And once you've learned one declension, that is a group of nouns with the same case endings, once you've learned one declension, you've learned all the nouns in that declension. Not just the noun you're looking at, but all the nouns that fit within that group. Sometimes, indeed, hundreds and thousands of nouns you now understand. There are 5 of these groups of Latin nouns, or declensions, but do not panic. We're only going to be looking at the first 2 declensions in our course, and today we're only going to be looking at the first 3 cases of just the first declension. So we're starting nice and easy. Let's introduce ourselves to the first declension. The vast majority of nouns in the first declension are feminine. Let's look at some examples from today's vocabulary list, which I'm going to give you later on to memorize. So anche la, meaning a maid or handmaiden, anche la. Notice how in each of those cases the ending is exactly the same. Anche la, acqua. We're going to see why that is in a moment. There are some exceptions to the first declension being almost exclusively feminine. It's almost exclusively because some first declension nouns are masculine, even though the endings look like the same as the others. And these do have to be memorized, but the good news is that there aren't many of them. Let me give you one example. Nauta means sailor. It's a masculine noun, hidden, as it were, in the first declension, and it has the same ending as all the other feminine first declension nouns. These exceptions start to become important when we start to deal with adjectives and pronouns, but we're not there yet. You don't have to worry about that for now, so do not panic. I want us to begin by looking at how a declension is structured. Look at this on your screen. Let's look at the top. You've got singular and plural. What does that mean? Again, is there one thing or person, or is there more than one thing or person? Singular or plural? Let's look at the singular and plural for now as we go down the rows. First of all, you've got nominative. And that is referring to the subject, the one doing the action. Remember, Puella familiam amat. The girl was the subject in the nominative case because she was the one doing the action. You've got genitive, and that describes a relationship of possession. So, for example, when we would say the ball of the girl, or the girl's ball, or the girl's rose, or the rose of the girl, there we're describing a genitive relationship, a possession. Almost like our genes, right? We own our genes. They are in us. They belong to us. Our genes, obviously, in the biological sense, and maybe even in the fashion sense as well. They belong to us. That's one way to remember what genitive means. Dative, that describes, and I'm being very crude here. If you do know Latin, you know I'm being crude, and you understand that this is a Latin for beginners course, so please be patient with me. But the dative is describing very broadly a 2-4 relationship. The boy buys the rose for the girl. There is a dative relationship, almost like going on a date, if you want to use that to remember it. Then you've got the accusative. And here is where the noun is being affected by the verb. So remember that before. The girl loves the family. The family is being affected by the verb. The family is receiving the action, receiving the love of the girl. And so in that case, the family would be in the accusative because it is receiving the action. Then you've got the ablative. That describes, well, actually there are many ways in which the ablative is used in Latin, but we're starting simply. So it broadly describes a by, with, from relationship. So-and-so goes with the girl. Or so-and-so receives something from the girl, or so-and-so is praised by so-and-so. That describes an ablative relationship. Again, there is complexity, and there is more to it than that, but hopefully that gives you the sense. Then you've got the vocative. Now, we might talk in terms of vocation. Vocation, that is to say, it is our calling, and that helps us here, because when a noun is in the vocative, it is being addressed, it is being called, it is being exhorted. So, for example, oh, the times, oh, fortune, oh, countrymen, listen to me. In each of those cases, the nouns are in the vocative. They are being addressed, they are being called upon. Now we're going to decline. That's how it's often talked about. That's the word that's often used. It just means unpack. We're going to unpack our first Latin noun. And we're going to use the Latin noun rosa, meaning rose. Now I'm going to show you this on your screen. Don't be intimidated by what you see. We're going to be going through this nice and easy. Now in Latin, what you've got, and in many languages that are inflected, there is talk of the stem. It's quite helpful for us here, actually. Can you see that there's something come from my window? I told you it's a hot day, so we're getting things coming through the window. In many inflected languages, there is talk of the stem, and we're using the word rosa, meaning rose, so it seems appropriate. The stem are all those letters before the ending changes. And in this case, the stem of the Latin noun rosa refers to R-O-S, ros, because after those first three letters, R-O-S, the ending changes. rosa, and then you have rosai, and then you have rosai again, rosam, rosa, and then in the plural, rosai, rosarum, rosis, rosas. So you can see that the stem, R-O-S, that goes first, and then the ending is attached to the stem, R, A-E, A-E, A-M, the long A, and then the plural, A-E, arum, and then is, and then as, and then is. The nominative, the subject. When the rose is the subject in the sentence, in the singular, it's rosa, the rose, a rose. There is no Latin word for the or for a as in a definite article. You have to kind of put that into it, right? But the rose, a rose, rosa. When you want to talk about that in the plural, the roses, rosai. Let's look at the genitive. Remember, it's a relationship of possession, like our genes. We own them, they belong to us. When it's just one rose, when we want to say of the rose, or the rose's smell, or the rose's colour, we would say rosai, rosai. When we want to describe the roses in plural, like for example, of the roses, or the roses, plural, colour, the roses, the smell of the roses, we would say rosarum, rosarum. Let's look at dative. It describes a 2-4 relationship. When we want to say something like the boy bought a vase for the rose, well, you would say rosai, rosai. Now note how it's the same ending as the genitive in the singular. And you might be wondering, how do you tell them apart? Context. Context. Just like in an English sentence, you intuit things from context. It's the same for Latin. I promise you it's not as complex as it appears. You need to memorize these, but then when you start reading Latin sentences, it will become clear. Accusative. When we want to say that the rose is receiving the action of a verb, for example, the boy cut the rose, you would say rosam. You would add a and m. And in the plural, rosas. In the ablative, by, with, or from relationship, the boy travelled with the rose, rosa, long A, macron over it, rosa. In the plural, rosis, rosis. Now, we haven't looked at vocative yet. When you're calling to the rose, right, well, it's an unusual thing to do, isn't it, to call to a rose, but you might imagine it happening in poetry or in a novel of some kind, and just for the sake of example, let's decline this, let's unpack this. Notice how it's the same ending as the nominative in both the singular and the plural. That's nice and easy. All you have to do, as long as you've memorised the nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative, you've also memorised the vocative. Well done. Nice and easy. Again, Latin is a nice, structured, systematic language for the most part. So let's isolate those case endings. You've got a, ae, ae, am, and then a in the singular, and in the plural, ae, arum, is as is. Ae, arum, is as is. Now you'll need to memorize these endings. There are all sorts of tools available. If you put onto YouTube Latin First Declension song, you're going to get so many results. And that's what I did when I first started. I have memorized, at the very least in the singular, using this tune. Now I can't sing, so forgive me for my bad singing. But I have it as A is for the nominative, AE genitive and dative, am accusative, the ablative long A. A is for the nominative, AE genitive and dative, am accusative, the ablative long A. And then in the plural, I, arum, is as is. I, arum, is as is. A is for the nominative, AE genitive and dative, am accusative, the ablative long A. And then I, arum, is as is. I, arum, is as is. In that sort of punctuated rhythmic fashion. Maybe that'll be a way for you to remember it. If it's helpful, please do take it as well. But there are all sorts of learning tools out there, and it is a short Google search away. All right. Today, for the rest of our time together, we're going to be focusing on the nominative, the genitive, and the vocative cases. So simple. And to help us learn these cases, these endings, we're going to integrate Latin nouns, singular, plural, nominative, genitive, and vocative into English sentences. Almost like steering wheels. Eventually we're going to get to translating whole Latin sentences, no steering wheels required, but for now, I promised a nice and easy start, and that's exactly what we're going to do. English sentences with Latin words interspersed. As I said before, context is key, and this will help train your brain to pick up on the different case endings naturally, organically from context. For each of these examples, you're going to need to discern what case it's in. Is it in the nominative, the subject? Is it in the genitive, the possession, these jeans belong to me? Or is it in the vocative? Is it being called? Is it being exhorted? And how many are there? Just one or more than one? So these are the nouns we're going to be playing with, okay? Puella, meaning girl. Puella, meaning girl. Familia, meaning family. Familia, meaning family. Via, meaning way. Vita, meaning truth. Adolescentia, meaning youth. Filia, meaning daughter. Aqua, meaning water. And ancilla, meaning maid. So these are the words that you need to be aware of as we go through these examples, and they're going to stay on the screen to help you. So we're going to start with a very short passage from Ørberg's Lingua Latina, Familia Romana, and we used some of it last time. We're going to be using an even shorter passage this time. There are only one or two things here with which you won't be familiar, and I'll explain them. One of them starts right at the beginning. Look at this. Estne delia filia aemiliae. Okay. Estne. You remember from last time, and we're going to go into it again in future, but estne, est. I remember Roma in Italia est. Roma in Italia est. Rome is in Italy. Est. He, she, it is. But notice that est here, at the beginning of the sentence, remember you can put Latin words in any which way and it means the same thing. Est is at the beginning of the sentence and it has N and E at the beginning. Now, you don't have to worry too much about this. All you need to know is that when that happens, it is signalling a question that is expecting a negative reply. Is not the Prime Minister the President of the United States? You know, no, it's expecting a negative reply. And when that happens in Latin, you often have NE suffixed to the end of the first word in the sentence. So, estne delia, it's a person, it's a name, delia. Estne delia filia aemiliae. Aemilia is another person, Aemilia. Two people, delia, Aemilia. Estne delia filia aemiliae. All right, let's go through it. Is delia filia, it's only got one A at the end, filia, that's right, the daughter. Is Delia, the daughter, something Aemilia? Seems to be asking a question. What question is it asking? Is Delia the daughter of Aemilia? So Aemiliae, I, there's the ending. It is in the genitive. Is Delia the daughter of Aemilia? And so it's in the genitive, Aemiliae. Delia non est filia Aemiliae. Delia is not the daughter of Aemilia. Delia ancilla Aemiliae est. Delia is the, what's the ancilla? Maid of Aemilia. Delia is the maid of Aemilia. Aemilia, notice the A ending. It's shifted to the nominative. Aemilia is the subject of the sentence. Aemilia domina, mistress. Aemilia domina, mistress Deliae est. Now the AE ending is attached to Delia. So now Aemilia is the mistress of Delia. Now the ending of Delia is now the one that's in the genitive. Aemilia domina ancillae est. Aemilia is the mistress of the maid. Again, it's in the genitive. Now we've got another person name, a name being introduced, Sera. Sera quoque, also ancilla est. Sera is also a maid. Delia et Sera duae ancillae sunt. Remember our numbers? Unos, duo, tres. Duae ancillae sunt. Delia and Sera are two maids. Aemilia domina mistress ancillarum est. Now, we haven't heard that ending yet. Notice how there is more than one of them, Delia and Syrah. They are maids, and Amelia is the mistress of the maids. Ancillarum, arum. It's in the genitive plural. So there we go. How did you find that? It wasn't too bad, was it? It wasn't too difficult. Let's look at some examples from our own best book examples. These ones all use Puella, or girl, as our example. Puella is quoque from Rome. Puella is quoque from Rome. What do you think? The girl is also from Rome. How about this one? That is Rosa Puellae. That is Rosa Puellae. That is the rose of the girl. Puellae, I, in the genitive ending, just one of them. That is the rose of the girl. In other words, that's the girl's rose. Don't steal that. That's the girl's rose. Kiss me, Puella. Kiss me, Puella. The girl is being exhorted, called to come and give me a kiss. It's in the vocative and it's in the singular. Kiss me, Puella. How about this one? Those have all been singular so far. How about in the plural? Puellae just want to have fun. Puellae just want to have fun. Isn't it Cindy Lawford? Am I right in thinking that? Or have I got the wrong person? Girls just want to have fun. The girls are the subject. There is more than one of them. Puellae. I. There's our ending. How about this one? He is the father, puellarum, sed non the boys. He is the father, puellarum, sed non the boys. He is the father of the girls, plural genitive, sed non, but not the boys. Pay attention, Puellae. Pay attention, Puellae. Imagine you're teaching some girls in a classroom. Pay attention, Puellae. They're being called, they're being exhorted. It's in the vocative, it's in the plural. There's our AE ending. And again, context gives us the clue. Okay, let's look at a second noun and see how it works out in the same way. Familia, meaning family. This is a Roman familia. This is a Roman family. Nominative, single. She is the domina familiae. She is the domina familiae. She is the mistress of the family. I ending. There's an A ending for the domina, subject, nominative, mistress. There is an AE ending for the familiae, genitive, singular. Let's go, my familia. Let's go, my familia. Imagine you've got a bunch of kids and you're trying to get them to get moving and get to a destination and you're exhorting them. Let's go, familia. Let's go, my familia. Vocative, single. Now let's look at the plural. Two familiae. Two familiae. Each alike in dignity. It's a bit of Shakespeare for you here. Plural, nominative. Two families. Familiae. Each alike in dignity. Now, how about this one? Vesta. She was a Roman goddess. Vesta is the goddess familiarum of Rome. Vesta is the goddess familiarum of Rome. Vesta is the goddess of the families of Rome. So familiarum, plural, genitive. How about this one? Familiae Romae, send your men to fight for home and country. The families of Rome are being exhorted to fight for home and country. This one was a bit sneaky. Look at that. Familiae, they're being exhorted, genitive, plural. More than one family being called upon to send their men to fight for home and country, genitive, plural. But then you've got Romae, families of Rome. There's a genitive, singular. Familiae, vocative, plural. Romae, genitive, singular. Send your men to fight for home and country. All right, there's some miscellaneous examples now. I'm not going to give you any cheats. This is a very famous Bible verse, John 14, verse 6. Jesus is via, the truth, et vita. Jesus is via, the truth, et vita. Those of you who know your Bible will know this already and will have intuited immediately. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. The folly, adolescentiae. The folly, adolescentiae, the folly of youth, genitive singular. Come here, Filia. Come here, Filia. Vocative, single. Come here, daughter. Come here, daughter. Vocative, single. Aquae of Mars. Aquae of Mars. Waters of Mars. Nominative, plural. She loves the smell, rosarum. She loves the smell, rosarum. She loves the smell of roses. Genitive, plural. Anculae, meet me tomorrow at noon. Anculae, meet me tomorrow at noon. They're being called upon. Who are being called upon? The maids. Anculae, meet me tomorrow at noon. Vocative, plural. Again, you might wonder how we tell some of these endings apart. You notice perhaps that Puella could mean of the girl, but also the girls. Again, context is key. And when you see the word surrounded by English, it helps. But it's the same thing. When you know more Latin, the context will make itself clear for the most part. Before our next time, what do you need to do? You need to memorize the Latin endings for the first declension. Memorize those. Now, let me say this about memorization in any language. You do need to memorize things when you learn a language. It is important for you to memorize things when you're learning a language. But memorizing alone will not make you proficient or indeed fluent if that's your goal. Memorizing is like the first step on the ladder. It's essential to get you to the top, but it won't in itself get you there. When you really start to understand a language, it's after you've memorized the essential things, and when you start to become immersed in actually reading things and translating things. For example, when I see arum, right? When I see arum at the end of a word, I just know, my brain immediately now intuits it's genitive plural. And I don't need to go, arum is asis. I just know. You will need to start with memorizing in the way I just did. A is for the nominative, A, genitive, and dative, I'm accusative, the ablative, long A. I, arum is as is. I, arum is as is. You need to do that. You need to start there. That's the first step on the ladder, the first step on the journey. But eventually, it will become natural. But secondly, I want you to remember 15 Latin words. Let's go through some of these then. Adolescentia, adolescentiae, meaning adolescence. Now notice, last time I got you to memorize Roma, Romai, Italia, Italiae, and you maybe were wondering, why am I memorizing Italia and Italiae? Now you know why. Adolescentia is the nominative single, adolescentiae is the genitive single, and knowing what that second bit is helps you know which declension it is, because that is unique to the first declension. Now you know why we're memorizing that. It's helpful when you start to learn other declensions down the line. For now, though, all you need to memorize: adolescentia, adolescentiae, adolescence, youth. Ancilla, ancillae, maid. Aqua, aquae, water. Domina, dominae, mistress. Familia, familiae, family. Filia, filiae, daughter. Fortuna, fortunae, fortune. Gloria, gloriae, glory. Patientia, patientiae, patience or suffering. Puella, puellae, girl. Rossa, rossae, rose. Sapientia, sapientiae, wisdom. Terra, terrae, earth or land. Via, viae, way or road. Vita, vitae, truth. Those are 15 nouns that I want you to memorize, but I also want you to memorize 5 more words, very simple. Most of these are adverbs. One of them is a pronoun. Let's go through them. Ubi, ubi, where. Ibi, ibi, there. Nihil, nihil, it's a pronoun meaning nothing. Saipe, saipe, adverb meaning often. And semper, semper, meaning always, another adverb, always. I want you to memorise all of those before next time and the endings of our first declension. But that's all for now. I want to thank you so much for your time. O aleite, discipuli et discipulae.